The Aryan civilization history does not end with the fall of a civilization. It transforms, reshapes, and re-emerges in new forms. Around 1900 BCE, the great cities of the Indus Valley began to fade into silence. Their brick-lined streets emptied, their drainage systems fell into disuse, and a question echoed through time. What happened next? Into this uncertain landscape entered a new group of people, pastoral tribes who spoke a powerful language, worshipped nature, and carried oral traditions that would later become sacred texts. These people are known as the Aryans. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of the Indian subcontinent, a chapter that laid the foundations of language, religion, social structure, and cultural identity that still influence millions today. This is not just the story of a migration. It is the story of how early Indian civilization was reborn through the Vedic Age. To understand South Asia today, we must first understand the Aryans. The Aryans were not a single empire or a highly urbanized civilization like the Indus Valley people. Instead, they were semi-nomadic pastoral tribes who relied mainly on cattle herding, hunting, and simple agriculture. Most historians believe that the Aryans originally came from the Central Asian steppes, gradually migrating into the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BCE. The word Arya itself means noble or honorable in Sanskrit, and it was used by these people to describe themselves, not as a racial term, but as a cultural and linguistic identity. The Aryans spoke an early form of Sanskrit, a language that would later become the foundation of many South Asian languages. Unlike the Indus people, the Aryans did not build large cities. Their settlements were mostly temporary villages, made of wood and mud rather than baked bricks. They lived in close-knit tribal groups, led by a chief known as the Rajan. Society was organized around kinship, and loyalty to the tribe was central to Aryan life. The Aryans placed great importance on oral tradition. Instead of writing, their knowledge, history, and religious beliefs were passed down through memorized hymns and chants. These hymns were later compiled into the Vedas, the oldest sacred texts of Hinduism. Thus, the Aryans should not be viewed merely as invaders or migrants, but as carriers of a new cultural system that gradually blended with local traditions to form early Vedic civilization. The movement of the Aryans into the Indian subcontinent is known as the Aryan migration, a topic that has been widely debated among historians. Modern scholarship generally supports the idea of gradual migration, not a sudden invasion. These groups entered through the northwestern passes, such as the Khyber Pass, and settled first in the region of Punjab and the Indus Plains. As pastoral people, the Aryans initially preferred regions with open grasslands suitable for grazing cattle. Over time, however, they began to adopt agriculture, especially after moving towards the fertile plains of the Ganges River. This shift from pastoralism to farming marked an important stage in the development of settled life. The interaction between the Aryans and the local populations was complex. There was cultural exchange, intermixing, and adaptation. Many practices of the earlier inhabitants were absorbed into Aryan culture, while Aryan language and rituals gradually became dominant. Iron technology, introduced later during the Vedic period, helped clear forests and expand settlements eastward. Villages grew in number, and social organization became more structured. This expansion laid the groundwork for future kingdoms and political systems. Thus, Aryan settlement was not just a movement of people, but a slow and transformative process that reshaped the social and cultural landscape of ancient India. Religion was at the heart of Aryan life. Their beliefs were deeply connected to nature and cosmic forces. The Aryans worshipped gods associated with natural phenomena, such as Indra, the god of thunder, and rain, Agni, the god of fire, and Varuna, the guardian of cosmic order. Their religious knowledge is preserved in the four Vedas, Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda. Among these, the Rigveda is the oldest and most important. It consists of hymns praising gods and describing rituals, social life, and values of early Aryan society. These hymns were memorized with extraordinary precision and passed orally from one generation to another. Rituals involved fire sacrifices, known as yajnas, performed by priests to please the gods and maintain harmony between humans and nature. At this early stage, religion was simple, flexible, and community-oriented. There were no temples or idols in the early Vedic period. Worship focused on chanting, offerings, and collective participation. Over time, religious thought became more philosophical, eventually giving rise to ideas found in the Upanishads, such as karma, rebirth, and liberation. The Vedic religious tradition became the foundation upon which later Indian philosophy and Hinduism developed. Aryan society evolved gradually. In the early Vedic period, it was relatively egalitarian. People were divided mainly by occupation, rather than rigid birth-based classes. However, as settlements expanded and wealth increased, society became more hierarchical. This led to the emergence of the Varna system, which later developed into the caste system. The four main Varnas were Brahmins, priests and teachers, Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers, Vaishyas, traders and farmers, Shudras, service providers. Initially, these divisions were flexible, but over centuries they became more rigid. Family life was patriarchal, but women in early Vedic society enjoyed greater freedom compared to later periods. They participated in rituals, composed hymns, and received education. Marriage was considered a sacred bond. Education was informal and oral, conducted in gurukuls, where students lived with their teachers and learned religious, moral, and practical skills. Thus, Aryan society laid the structural foundations of South Asian social organization. The Aryan civilization represents a turning point in the history of the Indian subcontinent. While the Indus Valley Civilization gave us cities and urban planning, the Aryans gave us language, literature, religious thought, and social institutions that endured for thousands of years. Their migration marked the beginning of the Vedic Age, a period that shaped the cultural and spiritual identity of South Asia. Through oral traditions, nature worship, and evolving social systems, the Aryans transformed a post-Indus world into a new civilizational framework. Understanding the Aryans is essential not just for studying ancient history, but for understanding the roots of modern South Asian culture, languages, and beliefs. History, after all, is not just about the past. It is about how the past continues to live within us.